Hey y'all, I wanted to do a quick video today about the metronome that I've been using in my instructional videos and that I'll be continuing to use. So I figured it was a good idea to show you some of the tips and tricks that I'll be using. I use the paid version, so a lot of the things that I demonstrate might be in the paid version. I forget exactly how much the paid version was. I think it was either $2.99 or $3.99. It's well worth the price. When I started teaching 30 whatever years ago, the cheapest metronome you could buy was about $10 or $15, and a good metronome was $30 or more, and you could easily spend $150 on a really fancy metronome. We're really blessed nowadays to have amazingly powerful metronomes on our smart devices, and I encourage you to take advantage of that. So the one I'm using is called Pro Metronome, as you can see up here. It is by Emu Lab, Xanin Technology, GmbH. It is available on both iTunes and Android, which is one of the reasons I like it. For a while I was using some other metronomes that were only available on Android, and that I found limiting for my students. So this is available on both. The free version is a nice basic metronome, and it does the basic things, right? So I'm going to press in the middle to start it. Okay. You see this number up the top, tempo 120. That's how many beats per minute the metronome is going to give you. And very simply, it's a skeuomorph, right? It's a representation of an old school physical style metronome. I just spin this dial to raise or lower the beats per minute. Let's see if we can get down to 100. I can also use the arrows if I want to go one at a time, right? So let's go back to 100. You see these 4 beats, because we're in 4/4. We'll talk about how to change time signature in a second. Any of these 4, I can make different sounds. I can make them all sound the same if I want, just by touching the bars, right? I like to have the accent on beat 1, but I could have the rest of the beats sound like that, or I could have them all sound with that high-pitched one. I can also turn any of them off if I want. Right? Pretty snazzy. I like that a lot. It gives me a lot of flexibility for using the metronome, not just in the most basic way, but also for some more difficult ways we can use it, which we'll talk about later, okay? So now let's talk about that 4/4 thing. You can see down here, it has 4/4. So I'm going to click that. I can add beats, and mine is beats. And then I can change the duration of the beat all the way down to 1, which is pretty unusual, but happens sometimes. And all the way up to 32, which 32, again, pretty unusual, but happens sometimes. 16 is pretty common. Let's play with 5/8 for a second, just so you can see how that sounds. So now I have 5 beats here. A common thing we might do in 5/8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We might count 5/8, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, just to make it a little easier. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So I could make this sound like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And you can see here that my subdivision is eighth note because I have an eighth note in the bottom number of the time signature, which means it's the eighth note that's getting those clicks. The eighth note gets the beat or count, right? Okay, so let's go back to 4/4 just to keep things kind of. We'll deal with one component at a time, right? You can combine all of these and create some really crazy things, but let's deal with one variable at a time. So you can see down here it says subdivisions, and I can scroll and there's quite a few. The ones I use most commonly with students are eighth notes. If I do this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you can change these on the fly. And I'm going to change this to 16th notes now. 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and still I can make this any tempo I want. I can slow it down, right? Or I can speed it up to something silly, right? Right. Okay, so sorry. The metronome goes all the way up to 500. Some of my younger students think that's hilarious, so it is kind of hilarious. 500, 16th notes at 500 would be, 2,000 notes per minute. And the highest, like the world's fastest drummer contests, they get to about 1,200 notes in a minute. So 2,000 notes a minute would be almost twice as fast as what the world's fastest drummers can play. Which is just pretty nutty. So the metronome can go faster than you would ever need subdivisions to go. It also, like most metronomes, has a tap feature. Oh, let's put the subdivision back to just quarter notes, right, which is our normal subdivision. The tap feature lets you tap, and you can put in your own tempo. So, right, I'm just tapping dump, 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 tap, 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 tap. And it'll show whatever you tapped, and then you just start, and that's where you were. So if you're trying to find the tempo of a song, or if you're playing something and you want to see what tempo you're using, there you go. We've also got this little stopwatch symbol down the bottom, and this is one of the more powerful features of the metronome. This is a practice mode, and we've got either warm up, target tempo, play tempo at ratio below, duration 5 minutes. And so this is really a pretty heavy duty way to create a warm up for yourself. But the one I really like is the automator, which you can speed up either by bar or by time. So the way it's set right now, I have every 2 bars or measures, we're going to increase 4 beats per minute. We're going to start at 90 beats per minute, and you can tap in a time if you want. And our max tempo is 180, and you can tap in a time for that if you want as well. And it'll take approximately 1 minute to get from that 90 to, so it tells you how long it'll take you for that automated pattern to happen. I can also have the screen flash when the tempo changes. So let's just look at that real quick and see what that looks like. So you can see every 2 bars, the screen is flashing as the metronome speeds up, and it's showing you the new tempo right in the middle here. And if you touch that red about button, it'll keep playing but stay at the tempo that it was. I think that button should probably say abort or cancel or something, but it says about. But what happens is it just cancels. Let's do that again so I can show you. See, it says about, and we'll let it speed up a couple times. Oh, and here's your bars left, and here's your time left, and here's a graphic representation of how far you've gotten. But so now here I am at 102. If I just touch the about button, it'll stay at 102 until I tell it to stop. Okay, so a couple other features. It has a memory feature where these are the standard ones that come in it. So this is the tune Money by Pink Floyd, which is in 7/4, and it's set up as 3 plus 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey Jude, right? And it's pretty easy to add your own. There's also a stage mode where they're really big buttons that you can hit, and it blinks really clearly, as well as the pendulum swing. Here's one with a subdivision, one of the more fancy subdivisions. Okay, so that's the memory feature is really quite powerful. You can, what'll happen is you put in, your time. So let's say we want this as a subdivision, and we want 5, 8, and we go over here. And that was the save button, and we just say, save it as test 2, and now it's down at the bottom of the list, right? So really piece of cake there. Okay, last we've got the settings. I want to talk about the tone for a second, because there's quite a few sounds, and some of them you might like the sound better than the standard sound, but one of them I think is particularly powerful, especially for beginners. So let's check that out. Okay, so this is the default tone. This one's more like almost like a drum. Very electronic, right? Again, another fairly electronic one. Kind of a woodblock one. Cowbell. Kind of very fairly realistic drum sounds. Number 13 is the one that I think is special.
4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So if you're having
1,
trouble,
2, 3, 4, 1.
So if you're having trouble counting along with these exercises we're doing, this metronome will essentially count for you. And you don't want to rely on that. You want to learn how to count out loud. But this can be like training wheels in helping you to count. It'll also do
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1,
count
and
the
2, and 3,
subdivisions.
and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4,
Let's
and
slow it
1,
down
and 2,
just
and
a little,
3, and
so
4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 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 4, and 1, and dot 2 E and dot 3 E and dot 4 E and dot 1 and dot 2 and dot 3 and dot 4 and dot 1 and dot 2 and dot 3 and dot 4 and dot 1 E 2 E 3 E 4 E 1 E 2 E 3 E 4 E 1 E 2 E 3 4.
Right. So some of the more intricate subdivisions, the vocal counting is almost annoying, but it can be really helpful as you're trying to figure out how these should sound. Okay. It also has a mute, so you can practice silently, which practicing with a metronome just with a visual cue can be very difficult. Okay. So that's a good thing to practice with as well. There's also ways to make it look different. So we can highlight, we have to turn the pendulum off, I think, to do this. There we go. So now it's red and yellow. And now it's just red on beat 1. We're back to the pendulum. And we could make the tempo be either beats per minute or quarter note per minute. And the difference in that, I would never want to use this, but just to explain what this is. So when we change the bottom number, and I said, well, when we put an 8 on the bottom, an 8th note gets the beat. This is always going to follow the number that's on the bottom, okay? If I switched it to quarter note per minute, it wouldn't necessarily follow the number on the bottom. If I put an 8 on the bottom, this is going to be half the number, okay? So if I wanted to play 5/8, 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5, and I wanted those beats to be what, 130 beats per minute. If I did this, I would just set it at 130. If I was going to do this, I'd have to set it at 260, right? Because it's keeping the other way. I'd have to set this at 65, right? Because the 8th notes are going to go twice as fast. Rhythm Trainer is for a gap click, which means I'm going to play for one measure and I'm going to mute for one measure. And you can turn a visual on or off for that. And what that just means is it's going to play like click, 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 and then be silent for a measure. And you have to try to keep your time steady for that measure. A gap click is one of the best ways to really work on your time. You can set it to vibrate or not. You can set it to flash the screen or not. It can have a sound effect when you touch the screen. It can be a reminder and allow parallel music playing. So that would be like if you wanted to play music from your other app and use the metronome on top of that. Okay, so that's pretty, one more thing. So with this up here, you can turn it sideways, landscape as it were, and I pretty much only use this when I want to do something kind of fancy, right? So I set the metronome for 16 and then I'll set it somewhere around here. And now suddenly this is 8 on a hand. So for students, especially at the very beginning, if they're having trouble keeping track of 8 on a hand, I can give them this cue, which is very specifically sound cued for one hand and then the other hand. right? And so all I did, I turned it on its side. I upped the time signature to 16. Doesn't even matter what's on the bottom, right? But so 16 on top. And then the first 8, I made the accent sound. And the next 8, I made the quietest sound. And so you really get a separation. And for students that are having trouble getting 8 and 8, this really works as a nice visual and audible cue to help them reinforce that pattern. Okay, so that's it. Again, Pro Metronome, available on iTunes and Android, and I think it's worth every penny of the couple bucks that it costs for the Pro version. But even for the free version, it's a nice solid metronome, and this is the metronome that I'll be using for our lessons together this year. Okay, so I hope you're ready for our drum set lesson tomorrow, and I hope you're doing well with our drum pad lesson from yesterday, and I'll see you again soon. All right, love you guys. Bye.